All right. So, hey, thanks everyone for joining us today. We're going to have a great investor ask me anything with Mario Casabona. I've had the good fortune of knowing Mario for 12 plus years. He's a staple and legend here in the New Jersey startup ecosystem. He's been a five-time top technology influencer for ROI New Jersey. He's done tons of angel investments at the seed stage, and he's a serial entrepreneur himself. So, um, so this event is being hosted by the Founder Institute, which is a great startup incubator, offers a world-class education, access to mentors, uh, access to feedback and advice to get companies fundable. Startup Grind throws terrific events. And then I started this community called the Innovators Alliance that allows people to learn and connect and apply knowledge of artificial intelligence. And just to give you a little info about each, we've got some events coming up for Innovators Alliance. We've got today's event, but there's also one tomorrow on creating a clear and compelling positioning statement. I recommend, if you haven't signed up for it, please do. Um, Founder Institute, our spring cohort's going to be starting soon. We're actually pushing, I believe we're pushing this date, startup date back to April for our next cohort. And we'll put all the links for this in the chat. And then Startup Grind has also a ton of great events coming up in the Princeton area, um, and highly recommend checking these out. One I'm most looking forward to is coming up in April is the AI Max Summit. Really, the last year's event was terrific. Look forward to that. Um, and so I'm going to be quiet for a second and let Don from Founder Institute um, and David from Startup Grind introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their organizations.
Thank you, Peter. Don Samoil, running the local chapter of Founder Institute, world's largest pre-seed accelerator. So we have three tracks depending on where you're at with just beginning your business and trying to find product market fit. If you have product market fit and you're looking to get to your launch, or if you have launched and you have some early success, customer or two, a little bit of revenue, but you know you need a little bit of help to scale. There's long and short of it is, we'll get you ready for Shark Tank, right? You may or may not want to go to Shark Tank or get on, but you will be ready. If you visualize yourself being able to withstand the grilling of people like that, people like Mario and David and some of the other people on this panel that want to know what your cost of customer acquisition, who your competition is, why you are the right team and you have the right product or service. We will get you there.
Cool. And then these are some upcoming events that they have coming up. Scan the QR code. And like I said, I'll also include some links in the chat in a little bit. And I'm recording this, and everyone will get access to the recording also. David.
So David Stengle, I run the Princeton chapter of Startup Grind. We're a global organization in 600 cities in 125 countries, and we focus on helping early stage startups learn about their journey, get ready for funding, so educate, connect, and inspire. We've been around for this is our 11th year, and our event tomorrow night will be our 150th event. And if you're a founder, especially a first-time founder, I encourage you to reach out and see if there's something we can do to help you.
Awesome. Thanks, David. And as David says, he's got some events coming up, um, here in February and March. A very active community. Highly recommend attending his events. So I'm going to stop sharing. And we're going to turn things over to Mario.
Okay. Well, Peter, I see you've got a nice lineup, a lot of attendees. Thank you very much. Peter, thanks for the opportunity to be part of this. And Don, a pleasure meeting you. And David, we've known each other for a few years as well. So it's great to be on with you guys. So my name is Mario Casabona. I've been trained as a electronic engineer and worked in the defense industry, and then went with a spin-off company called Princeton. So I'm going to go a little bit into my career and just as hopefully as a brief introduction. So, and Peter, if I'm just carrying on, because I can do that for a while, just let me know. All right.
No. We want to know your background and your story. I think that's important. Storytelling is such an important part of investing. So yes, please tell your story.
As well as a pitch deck. So,
Yeah.
yep. So electronic engineer, first job out of college was working for a defense company. So I'm really more of a design engineer. My background is electromagnetic fields and waves, and I could visualize, if you would, radio frequency signals that come out of antennas and all that kind of stuff. But that's my training, and started working for this defense company called ITT. And then when I went with a spin-off company called Curson Alterman, and I was there for a few years, and then it was purchased by Raytheon, and then I thought I could do a much better job than Raytheon, and I never got as big as Raytheon, obviously. So I spun off a company called Electro Radiation Incorporated. It was basically a defense company. We had clearances, we had contracts with some international companies, a lot of DoD, Pentagon, Warner Robins Air Force Base, China Lake in the West Coast, LA Air Force Base. So we did a lot of defense contracts, and it was primarily jamming and anti-jamming of radar, GPS navigation, and satellite communications. So it was exciting. And I got to tell you that when I first decided to actually start the company, I looked at various ways of starting. For instance, do I bootstrap the company? Do I mortgage my home and go to the bank? Do I go out for venture capital? And it turns out that for me, I was comfortable enough to actually take 2 weeks vacation money and bootstrap the company. So what I realized by bootstrapping the company, looking back, is that I had the company for 23 years, okay? And a majority, I would say, of the 23 years, I would say about 20 of those years profitable. So it was more of a lifestyle company, which was great. At the end, when I did sell it to Honeywell Aerospace, I owned 92% of the company. So that was my major exit, if you would. And that's, Peter, that's what allowed me to actually do what I'm doing, became an angel investor and giving back to the ecosystem. But during those 23 years, I also invested in some startups. And I also started a couple of other companies in between. But primarily, I got dragged back into Electro Radiation Incorporated because that was my bread and butter. And I enjoyed doing that. So in 2004, I sold it to Honeywell, and I was there for about 3 years. And after that, it was time for me to leave the large company. And at that point, I had to decide, do I want to start another company, or do I want to start seeding some companies and giving back to the ecosystem, and primarily focused in New Jersey. And what I decided to do is become an angel investor. And my portfolio right now is about 50 companies, tech companies. And initially, it was primarily opportunistic. In other words, if I met if I saw a great idea, a great team, good founders, I would invest. So I invested in medtech, digital health, recyclables, renewable energy, digital health, and also some military, some DoD companies. And what I realized after a few years is that it was probably my best return on investment was on investing in companies that my background could really help. Between my contacts, my experience, I understood the language, I understood the market, and that was primarily now what I'm focused on. So and then in between 2007 and today, becoming an angel investor, I wanted, and I've always had this philosophy of surrounding yourself with people that are much smarter than you are. So what I decided to do is to join Jumpstart New Jersey Angel Network. And there it's a group of 35 to 40 high net worth angel investors, successful, that are probably much smarter than I am in the different industries. So I'm a member of Jumpstart New Jersey Angel Network, joined 2007, became their chairman in 2009. And then in 2012, I had the opportunity to start another company called Tech Launch with some funding from the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. And it was really New Jersey's first tech accelerator. And we had the typical accelerator model, 16 weeks of what I referred to as boot camp training. Had that for about 3 to 4 years. We launched 23 companies. At the end of the 4 years, I realized that primarily what was out there was apps. At that time, looking back at 2012, 13, 14, and
There's a lot of
15,
mobile apps back then.
oh, Peter, that was
Myself
my life.
included. I was building mobile apps back then too.
Yeah, well, the thing is that young entrepreneurs would think, well, women, in the weekend, I can create this app and I'm an entrepreneur and become successful. Well, the reality is, yeah, maybe you can do wireframes. Yes, maybe you can do some apps, but at the end of the day, it's a startup. You've got to have the right market. You've got to have the right team together. You got to have the drive, the passion, and you don't do that in a weekend. I think it 3, 6, 9 months, but that wasn't my background. So at that time, I said, okay, and I still want to keep, I still wanted to give back. So what I decided to do is to pivot Tech Launch into a business accelerator. And primarily what it was is Shark Tank, where we vetted some companies, we mentored some companies, and then we had an event called the Bullpen, and Peter is familiar with it. In fact, Peter was one of our mentors.
Yeah, it was a
And
lot of fun. You would have
yeah,
these monthly or every other month
well, it's
bullpen
interesting,
pitch
Peter.
events
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
get
I'm
great
sorry.
feedback and great startups.
Yeah, we started. I was very ambitious. We started with every other month, and then realized it's a lot of work, and we went to every 3 months, and then we went every 4 months. And I said, "Holy shit, man! I'm not going to do this. I got to do this." So we had twice a year, and then COVID came along, And that actually made life. By the way, we had this tech launch bullpen events at different universities across the state, right? So that was really exciting. And you know, we had a lot of people complaining about the food. And my reaction was, no, we have pizza and water. Remember, Peter?
Yeah,
Pizza and
keep it
water.
simple.
That was it. All right. And Dave, you know, you were part of that
You're
too.
looking for a shrimp cocktail
Yeah.
Yeah.
and wine?
And some universities would say, no, we got to do better than just pizza and water. And I said, no, we can't. But I did give up. I did give in to Monmouth University. I
Okay.
did. They had really pretty good event. So did that. Went through COVID, having virtual, and then at the end, back probably in 22, 23, I realized that guess what? My competition, everybody was doing, not everybody, a lot of universities were doing pitch events. You know, then a lot of, well, the accelerators were always doing pitch events. So I decided that, say, you know, what value am I really adding to the ecosystem? That was always my focus on that type of enterprise, was what value. And I realized that, you know, I wasn't really adding that much value. It was too much work, Peter. It was really too much work. And in the meanwhile, I was really sort of, you know,
Don and Bill can probably attest to that. Don, how much work is it running an accelerator incubator program?
I just wanted to say, I wanted to say, like, pizza, you had pizza. We used to walk uphill in the snow, right? Both ways for a crust of bread, right? Running an accelerator, and, you know, we're lucky, right? Is, you know, again, that's one of the reasons why, again, yeah, I mean, and David can attest also, right? You know, doing it without the support of these global, I don't know how you did it, right? Because Founder Institute, Startup Grind, right, have these
Yeah,
global organizations
global
with this
instinct. Yeah.
curriculum and knowledge base and so on. We're really very blessed to have the structures that have come up over the last, you know, decade or what have you, to run these things. Because and again, not to say, you know, if anybody wants to create their own, God bless, but be aware, it is a ton of work, even if you do have a whole infrastructure behind you. If you're going to do it from scratch, good luck.
yeah. And you know, Don, the thing is, with the first 3 years, I actually raised a fund. And you know, and here's, I'm an entrepreneur, and I've what the hell's a fund? You know, but I learned a lot. So I raised 3 funds, and and that's one of the reasons why at the end of the 4 years I said, I'm not doing this again. I got to go fundraising. I'd rather just write the check. What the heck? So it was really so. But in the meanwhile, I'm sort of ignoring my angel investments. I would just be writing checks. And I said, no, there's got to be a better way. So about 3 years ago, I sort of put tech launch aside, and I'm focusing more on my angel investments. And I love it. I really enjoy the angel investing. I still do mentoring. You know, I'll mentor 1 or 2 entrepreneurs a day. And if I don't, I get worried. That means nobody loves me. So and you know, mentoring, Peter, Don, you know, David, you could understand this. Mentoring, whether you mentor a biotech or a pharma or a tech company, it's about the same, especially at the pre-seed and seed stage. You know,
That's a good point.
then you're trying to structure your company. You're trying to figure out, what does a pitch deck look like, and do I have to build a team? You know, all the. But that's basically common with most of the industries that are out there. So Peter,
I agree.
that's sort of my story.
Yeah, and there's a lot of value in putting a pitch deck together, even if you're not trying to raise money, because it really forces you to think through all the different aspects of your business. Um, Building a team, what's my unique value proposition? What's my path to growth? You know, who's my competition? These are all questions entrepreneurs really need to nail down before you sort of set out on turning your idea into a vision. So even if you're not going to raise money, I think it's a valuable exercise to go through, and certainly a lot easier to just do a 10-page pitch deck than back in the day when I graduated school. It was like, no, put together a 50-page business plan, you know, and I felt those were useless. But I think there's value in doing a pitch deck. What are your thoughts, Don and David, about that?
Absolutely. I think it's incredibly important to be able to tell the story and paint the picture of how you are changing the life of your customer. And that has a storytelling component, that has a why are you special component that you just have to get right.
I agreed 100%. What I would say to founders is, be aware. It's funny. As someone who has unfortunately been behind the curve, let's say, to put it mildly, in fashion, I always said, like, why does it always have to change, right? It's big, it's small, it's up, it's down, blue, black, whatever. Well, now pitch decks have their own fashion cycles, so be aware, because it is changing, and it has changed. And if you take what used to, they and again, not to say that the Airbnb deck, right, isn't a good one. It's held up as one of the standards because they managed to raise, and so everybody says, go look at the Airbnb deck and cut. Well, but you have to be aware of, we live in a TikTok world, and investors have the short attention span as the rest of us. Also because it's now so much easier to create stuff. And so every angel, VC, whatever, is getting bombarded with pitches. You don't have time, right? We just don't have the time to look at 50 slides saying, well, once upon a time, there was a planet and there were dinosaurs. No, you have to hit them fast and hard. If I may, just give it a real brief, a little anecdote that I share from Founder Institute. Had a really nice founder who went through his pitch, and halfway through showed a picture, did a screen share, and said, "This is the only picture I have of my mom." We had a fire, and all of her photo albums went. And we didn't have access to her social media when she passed, and that's why he created his venture. And I got goosebumps, and I said, I don't even want you to say hello. You walk in and you put that up and you say, this.
I set your timer. I think you're close to taking binder, right?
Amit, you want to mute? Thank you. Get them, your pitch deck has to be succinct. It has to hit them hard, fast, make sure that they're interested, right? It's got to be a little elevator pitch. And then because the standard deck that has been so successful in the past will not succeed. It will not resonate. So reach out to Founder Institute, Startup Grind, Mario, somebody somewhere. Do your research. Don't just accept the conventional wisdom. It's not conventional anymore.
Okay. So thanks, Don.
Peter, if I can add to that a little bit.
Yeah, please do.
So one of the reasons I decided to do to bootstrap is because when I did go to the bank, they wanted this huge business plan, and besides putting my house on collateral. And if I went to a VC or an angel investor, I'm not sure I knew what an angel investor or a VC was at that time. But if I did, they wanted a whole business plan, 50, 60 pages. So for me, what I did is I literally did a pitch deck, maybe not as colorful as I would do it today, and maybe not as pointed as I would do it today. But I had to do something for myself. Where am I going? What's my team? What's the market like? So I did have a pitch deck.
Cool.
I just didn't view it as something I was going to pitch to investors. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing that story. So I want to now turn it over and start opening up to the people to start asking some questions. And one of the first questions I see in the chat is from Jana asking, like, hey, when you were bootstrapping, how big was your team? And then I want to sort of add to that of, hey, not only how big was your team, but maybe give people some guidance on like, hey, how far should you bootstrap versus like when do you sort of decide that, hey, I need to start raising some outside money, whether it's friends and family, angels, VCs. Give a little guidance around bootstrapping.
So that's a really that's a good question. So so I started my team as one called Mario. That was it. I was the
Big
founder,
Mario.
CEO. I was the bottle washer. I was everything. And I was working 60, 70 hours. And by the way, I was married. I had 2 kids, right? So and then in time I hired another engineer and then another engineer. So by the time I was done, within 3 years, I had about 25 engineers on my staff. Okay. And we started initially with contracts, providing engineering services to the large defense contractors, and then it went to the DoD. Okay, and then became experts, and then we brought contracts in. So it took me quite a while to really become the company to become noted in the industry. So I would say it took a good 5, 6, 7 years to make that happen. Okay. And then once it took off, it was much easier. We had to have special accounting systems for doing DoD. We had special security clearances. So it was a little bit more bureaucratic than just writing an app. But I learned a lot, so it was pretty good. So the second part of the question, Peter,
Yeah, it was
had to
about
do.
bootstrapping. Like, how do you know? Like, what do you think about bootstrapping versus immediately going and trying to raise money
Yeah.
versus like, like what's sort of some general advice around bootstrapping?
Yep. So I didn't want to waste time writing the business plan, going to the bank, and so I just wanted to do it. Okay, so that was me. Now the upside to bootstrapping, and then for how long, the upside of bootstrapping is that you own quite a bit of the company. You own 80, 90% of the company. If you decide to bring on a consultant or advisor, you have to give away some equity. But you own quite a bit of the company. And the real difference is that bootstrapping is a much longer process to an exit. Okay. Really, so for instance, it took me 23 years. All right. I decided at the end of about 19, 18 years that, hey, okay, I want to exit the company. I want out. So then I restructured the company. And that's really what allowed me to sell it. So again, getting to the big difference is bootstrapping is going to take quite a bit of time. When you try to raise capital, it's going to take you some time before you can launch the company because you got to raise the capital. And then once you do the capital, you now have partners. Even though they may be 15, 20% partners, you now have partners, and you have to justify what you're doing to some extent. You have to start building a team. You're now being monitored by your investors, which is a good thing. But the good side to raising capital, and I can talk about the different cycles around fundraising cycles. The good thing, though, about getting investors is that even though you may own at the end of the day 20, 25% of the company, you're going to get there much faster. So the exit's going to be 5 to 10 years in a tech company versus bootstrapping a lifestyle company, which is going to take twice as much or maybe 3 times as much. All right. So, and I guess I wasn't smart enough or had the patience to raise capital to have to, have people telling me what to do, all right, or how to do it. Maybe I wasn't a good listener, or maybe I just wanted to do my thing and get there. So it took much longer.
So knowing what you know now about raising money, if you were to do it over again, would older Mario have advised younger Mario to go raise some capital, or would you have still stuck with the bootstrapping approach?
Well, I guess I got smarter. So I would advise other entrepreneurs to do a pitch deck, okay, tell their story, and try to raise capital.
Okay.
And primarily because you can exit in 5 to 10 years. Now, if Mario had to do it again, I'm not sure if I would have the patience to do that.
Gotcha. All right. So
I
let's
gotta
keep
call
things
you Super
moving.
Mario then. You're Super Mario at that point.
Yeah. But after a while you get tired. So yeah, okay, maybe let me suck other people in, give me some money, but then I have to answer to somebody, right? Or a group, which is not bad because it motivates you, keeps you on track,
Hold you
and hopefully
accountable.
make less. Hmm?
Hold you accountable.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know,
Mario, can
when you
I
have investors. Yeah, go ahead,
can I
Johnny. You have
say
a follow-up?
that yeah, just because like I'm bootstrapping at the moment and I don't have I only have 3 colleagues working with me, but I have a patent and I cannot wait 23 years because it will expire. And I was just wondering, does it matter that you have a patent or not? In a sense, as long as you have an exit in 23 years? I wanted to hear Mario's and other people's thoughts about it.
I can actually, I can touch upon that if you don't mind. Because I'm in a similar boat. Sorry to interrupt, but I would say that that's a great question. It really depends on what you're building, right? So from my perspective, I'm in the medtech, biotech side for cloud services in terms of quality systems and really accelerating documentation for the FDA and regulatory authorities. And I'm building a service as a software platform. It's opposite. It's not a palindrome, but it's the opposite in terms of combining my consultancy with a tech platform to kind of create that 80-20 rule. 20% of the work will come from the humans, the 80% of the work will be done by the AI humans, whatever you want to call them, the aliens, the Martians. We don't know. But the point is that I would say I was looking into patent, having a patent for my software, but it's so easy to get around it. Someone can mimic me very easily, right? It's different with hardware. But for software products, from my due diligence and the my advisors, the people that I've met with, software is not really worthy of a patent unless there's really something novel about it. And maybe someone else can add to that, but I'm just curious to see what your perspective is, Mario. And then that was just my comment.
So thanks for that question. Turns out that for the first 18 years, I never worried about a patent because my primary focus was to get DoD contracts, build relationships, get to be recognized in the industry. But then when I decided to sell the company, we focused on a certain technology, which was originally GPS jammers and GPS anti-jamming. And and then I realized at that point, it took me 20 years to get smart. I realized that in order for me to sell the company, I'd have to have some intellectual property. So what I did is I created, when I say created, my staff, my engineers, CTO, by the time we sold the company, we had about 11 or 12 both national and international patents. Okay. So the patents helped me exit the company. Okay. So as much as I didn't concentrate on the patents in the first 18, 19 years, and I was building a business, great revenue, at the end, the patents helped me sell the company because to a larger company, to the acquirer, they're looking for protection of some kind. So if it's easily copied, then it's why make the investment? Okay, unless it's really monumental. But patents are important. That's the point I'm trying to make. So if you've got investors and you're looking to exit, you really need that intellectual property to protect yourself.
Yep. And if you need some access to patent lawyers, myself, I'm sure Mario knows people, Don and David. I know people can help you in that area. So feel free to reach out. I want to keep things moving along. I'm just going to go through sort of the set of questions that I've seen people popping up here. So Harry had a question about regional marketing, regional level marketing. Harry, do you want to take yourself off mute and expand upon that question for Mario? Is Harry still here? He might not be here. So we'll move on to the next question.
So if I could just briefly answer that question, and
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
not, yeah. So regional marketing, it depends on depends on your product, depends on the company. So for instance, my marketing was international and national, right? Because it was Department of Defense, I have to go where the customer goes. So I went all over the country. I would go to the Pentagon every couple of weeks for a 1 hour meeting. I'd go to LA Air Force Base for a 1 hour meeting, and I would do all that in 24 hours. So it depends on the industry. If you're doing retail, if you're pharmaceutical, well, you've got to go where the customer is. So it depends. So my answer to regional marketing is it depends on the customer. If the customer is national, that's where you got to go.
Okay. James had a follow-up question about bootstrapping. The length of bootstrapping and family financial responsibilities. Did you have another revenue stream during those 7 years, those 6 years?
No, nope. So
Okay.
keep in mind, I started the company as a consulting company. I always wanted to build products. I'm more of a hardware-oriented individual, but it was very difficult because I bootstrapped to start building hardware for customers. Okay, for my customers. So what I did is I started consulting, and I started having income within 30 days. So providing services. So consulting services. When I mentioned earlier that I had 25 engineers on my staff. Okay, well, they weren't really working on product development. They were out there consulting.
Okay.
So that's how I generated revenue and had great cash flow.
Gotcha. That you could then reinvest back into products.
Absolutely.
Okay. Leon has a question. I'm struggling finding co-founders. What do you believe would help? I'll start by saying, like, hey, joining programs like Founder Institute or attending Startup Grind is a great place to start networking and meet your potential co-founders. Mario, Don, and David, what can you add to that?
So I'd say that figuring out how to close a co-founder is your first sale as a founder.
Oh, that's a good way to
And
put it.
it's really important for you to find someone that believes in the vision, because there are going to be rough patches at some point in the process. It's inevitable, and you need that belief and conviction in the dream that you're building towards to make it happen. But if you can't find people that know this space and complement your skills, that believe in what you're doing, that's a serious red flag in either your ability to tell the story or the proposition of the business.
Okay. Don, your thoughts?
So as I put in the chat, I please, look, a co-founder, like a good spouse, can change your life and make, everything better and in the right circumstance. Again, so somebody had asked the question, I think, about the size in the bootstrapping, and so if you know yourself, and sometimes you've got to fail a few times. As a solo founder, I was not great. There's a lot of stuff I didn't want to do. I'm not a bean counter, right? So I would leave the books and I would not bill my clients until I ran out of money, and then I had to go bad. So having a CFO, right, was or somebody who was willing to do some of those things was incredibly useful. That being said, I have also seen far too many startups, die because of divorce, right? Poor divorce in their personal lives, but also, the divorce of the founders. So when you meet a co-founder and there is try to date, right? Be consultants, make sure that everybody vests into the company. You don't have how many times have we all seen, right? 4 friends over beers, like, yeah, we're going to do this 25% each. Let's go. And then a week later or a month later, one of those 4, says, my wife, my husband, my kids, my whatever, I can't do any of the stuff that I promised. But by the way, I'm keeping my 25%. So ask the people on this panel, reach out. Mario is sharing some great wisdom and again loves to mentor people. David, go to the Startup Grind events and ask these questions. Reach out to me and Peter. Ask about what structures do you know people that would be good co-founders, right? At least if you're going to, do this kind of, speed
So
dating, get an intro.
So
I wanted to,
Leon, if I may, Peter, can I
sure.
add to that?
Yeah, please do.
So,
And then you
so
can go
Don,
around.
I've run into a lot of companies as an investor where you've got, sole founder, which I would not invest in, 2 or 3 founders that you're right, have a sit around a bar and have a couple of drinks and we're going to start a company. And then a year later, one of the individuals meets another individual and now they don't want to work as hard. So there's a lot of things going on. So the right co-founder is so important. Now, I have to confess, I did have 2 co-founders when I when I continued the company. So what happened was I started the company on my own. I had a great revenue stream. And remember, I mentioned earlier that I had 25 engineers on staff. At that point, I decided that I want to create it besides services. I wanted to get into product development. At that point, I brought in a partner, 33% partner, Paul Berkowitz, wonderful guy, smarter than I am in every which way, except for business. So my value added was the business side. So he owned 33%. He helped me grow the business. Okay. It was the best thing I ever did. And then I brought on another 2% partner who's the Undersecretary of Defense. And I never looked at them as co-founders. I looked at them as partners. So even though one had 2% and the other one had 33%, they were, as far as I were concerned, equal partners. That's number one. Number two, when I decided that I wanted to exit the company, one of my co-founders, Paul, didn't want to sell the company. I bought him out, and at the end of the day, that's why I own 92%. So having co-founders is very important, especially to talk, to bounce ideas off. And then how do you find that co-founder? Well, it turns out he found me. That's number one. And number two, you have to know the individual. I used to work with Paul and Stan. I worked with them. So I knew their background. I knew their work culture and what they could do. So that's very important. So sitting around a table with a bunch of guys drinking a beer, that ain't working. That's not going to work.
That's
Right.
My
definitely
experience.
what I was afraid of. I do have people interested, and I am struggling how to structure the deal with the co-founder and how I would and how much I'm willing to give up and what roles they would play, because I have done majority, I would say almost 90% of everything already with the patent, the layout, the pitch deck, everything has been done. So I am curious now as to what value and what type of value they need to bring along. And that's where I'm struggling.
Well, Leon, can I answer that, Peter?
Yes, please jump in.
So, Leon, patents are important, pitch decks are important, understanding what you're going to do, what you want to do is important, but more importantly is execution. Okay, you got a great idea, you got it on paper. Okay, you have a lot of your friends and family are telling you this is a great idea, great idea. You now have to execute. You can't, it's very difficult to execute by yourself. All right. You could be the CEO, but you need support, whatever, a CTO. When I say a CTO, to me, a CTO is you go to a Merck, a pharmaceutical, that's a real CTO. When I talk about a CTO in a startup, that's a guy that has his boots on the ground, has got his hands wet, he's going to get dirty. Okay, so you need a technical person. You need somebody that has some accounting. Do you need a CFO? No, you need a bookkeeper maybe to start off, but somebody that's going to keep your records, right? You need somebody to do marketing unless you do it yourself, Leon, right? So you have to build a team. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you so much for the information. I really appreciate it. And I would love to connect with someone that I can discuss this further. I know we're time constrained, and hopefully I can reach out to someone to discuss this just a little further.
Yeah, feel
And
free. I put my LinkedIn profile in the chat near the beginning with myself and Don. Feel free to connect. Mario, you're welcome to share your LinkedIn or connection information with the team if you're interested, or with the attendees.
So my email address is mario@casabonaventures.com. My focus is, again, deep tech, hard tech related to aerospace. Okay, so if you're looking for funding, and if you have that kind of idea or product, would love to hear from you. If you're just looking for some advice, love to hear from you also, but please do not inundate me. If you have an idea, send me a one-page executive summary that I can read in 5 minutes.
What about
And then I can tell you where to go.
What about like biotech, medtech? Do you focus on that or not so much?
No, not so much. No, medtech, I've invested in medtech, digital health, but not really.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to waste your time,
Amit, reach out. We all know people that are specialists in med tech, and we're happy to make some connections. Also, for those who are interested, I put in the chat, Founder Institute has some templates that have become industry standards for again getting your co-founders and advisors and so on a vesting schedule. You can customize them and whatever, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? There are some good templates out there. Again, and there's a lot of free help and advice. Reach out to us, and we're most of us will give you a little bit of time at least to help you out.
Okay. So in the in order to try to get to as many questions as possible, since we're down to our last 11 minutes, I'm going to ask that you sort of keep these answers to like 30 seconds to a minute, and we'll sort of try to do like a rapid fire here. Sound good, Mario?
Fine with me.
So next question, someone direct messaged me of, can you share your advice regarding keeping the cost of running a startup frugal? So for example, how can I keep the cost of legal services lower?
You have to shop around, get advice. Peter mentioned that he knows some attorneys. So do I, probably Don, David. We can we know the good, inexpensive attorneys.
Yeah.
Right. So from that point of view, regarding financials, yeah, I know some good accounting firms, and I've got some really good friends in some large accounting firms. But at the same time, you got to be frugal. So one of the things you can do is when you go to a law firm, find out what kind of startup package they have. You go to an accounting firm, find out what kind of startup package they have. So maybe for $2,000 to $3,000, you can incorporate your company. For $2,000 or $3,000, maybe you can have your accounting system set up. So shop around.
Okay, thanks. Next question is from Gary. Similar to the business plan versus pitch deck, how much detail should go into a go-to-market plan?
So what I want to hear is well, one slide in a pitch deck. In a 50-page business plan, you're talking about 5 or 6 pages from that point of view. But what I'm interested in initially seeing in one slide is what's the market size, what's the realistic market size that you're going after, okay? and how are you going to go after that market? But that's
Yeah.
one slide, because
Yeah, I want to, yeah, and
if
I'll add to
that
that. I
captures
see a
my
lot of people
interest,
say,
then I'll go
oh,
into a deep dive.
do not do the, oh, this is $1 trillion industry. If I
No.
get 1%, we're $1 billion,
No.
we're a $10 billion company. Focus on like, hey, this is a big market, but here's how I'm going to get my first 50 customers. Like I think that's a better plan.
Exactly.
So it's a market
Uh,
acquisition strategy.
just to pile on, I want to know who's going to be closing those deals.
Hmm.
Segment that is going to find what you're doing the most compelling day one, and why do you believe that?
Thanks, David. So Roy had a question on patent value is directly correlated to how many investors you or your patent value is directly correlated to how many lawyers you or your investors have on staff. All right, so he was just providing sort of some comment on how to value your patents. Patent.
So, I mean, it's interesting. When I look at a patent portfolio of a startup, we talk about startups now, right? Seed stage.
Yes.
If I see a provisional patent, 1 or 2 or 3 provisional patents, that gives me a year, right? To see what happens with the company. An entrepreneur can probably write their own provisional patent, or
Okay.
maybe have someone else help you with writing a okay, when I wrote the not me, when my engineers wrote the provisional, they wrote the provisional patents, and then we went to a law firm to actually do the patent application itself. But we did our own provisional patents.
Okay. Randy asked, Mario, can you expand on what you look for in the idea and the startup team?
So number one, the idea has to be interesting, but even more importantly is the team. Okay, everybody has some great ideas, but it's the team that's going to execute that idea. In other words, development, and then demonstrate it, okay, and then get it into the market. All right, finding the customers. It's the team that makes it happen. If you run into problems, it's the team that will be able to pivot. And if it turns out it's an idea that's not going to work, there may be a chance that the team will pivot to make that idea, or maybe a modified idea to make it happen. So to me, team is more important, and then the idea is second important.
Yeah,
I
I'd
agree.
even
Bet on
say,
they say you bet on the jockey, not the horse.
yep. I'd add to that, that the problem is more important than the solution. If the problem is important and you become expert at it, even if your idea is not exactly right, you can adjust. But if the problem's not interesting, doesn't matter how good the idea is. So you really
Right.
need a strong team and a problem that people care about.
Yep. Every problem has a solution, but not every problem is worth solving.
Exactly.
So Amit had a question. What are your thoughts on a service as a software platform where you bootstrap 100%, where you generate revenue from the LLC and funnel the money into the C Corp software as a service company? So Amit, I don't know if you want to sort of add to that or clarify that. You're sort of saying set up two separate legal entities.
Yeah, I'll make this quick too because I want other people the last 5 minutes. So I started a consultancy, a medtech consultancy, a little less than 2 years ago. I was a one-person team. I made well over 6 figures. Didn't hit 7, but was on the verge there. I didn't know how to scale, honestly. So I was making between 30 to 50K a month for 2, 3 months, but I lost it all because I didn't know how to scale. Things changed in the last 6 months where I hired a CTO, a CEO, people who have more experience than I do, people who can help me fundraise, etc. But really kind of they want to build the LLC first because they think it's viable to bootstrap most of the time. Me, like Mario said, I want to move faster. So I'm looking to raise a small amount of money so I can expand on the SaaS platform that automates everything I'm doing in the LLC. So if I do a pre-submission with the FDA, I'll throw out arbitrary numbers, 100 hours, right? The software will take care of 80 hours. The 20 hours is on me to review it, and I'll submit to the FDA. So pretty much it's the 80-20 rule. Is it possible to do that and keep going with it? I think it is, but there are no yes or no wrong questions. I mean, sorry, yes or no, there's right or wrong. There's no right or wrong is my point. The point is that what would you do in the situation? Because I like to move fast. I'm young, I want to move as fast as possible because I'm moving very swiftly, but I want to move faster than I can without cutting corners.
Mario, your thoughts?
My thoughts? Keep in mind, when I built my company originally, I had two divisions. I had the technical services, and then I had the product development group. All right. I started the company with the technical services that gave me the cash flow to allow me to also then create the product development. Okay. So the problem with trying to raise company while you have two, and I went through this experience. The problem with raising capital when you have two entities is that the investor doesn't know which entity you're going to focus on when everything turns to shit. Excuse me, am I allowed to use that?
I want to use the same language. I'm sorry, I'm in New York, but don't mind me.
I'd also say
entrepreneurs that straddle the fence is a huge problem. I wouldn't invest. In fact, that's the first question I ask is, wait a minute, this is a spin-off of another company. What's your relationship in that other company? You still own it. You still run it, right, Dave? And then you're right in the middle. And when things turn to, excuse me, shit, you're going to go back to the other company, and the company you raise capital for is going to turn into shit. So, I always say to entrepreneurs, you're one individual or a group individuals, focus on the company, whichever one you decide is going to give you that exit.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers any questions.
No,
I'd also
insight.
say there's another risk for an investor, which is if you're moving money back and forth, the level of visibility and controls over that, it's very challenging. You're just creating a lot of hair on the deal. So you need to figure out if you want to get venture funding, you're making a C Corp, you're putting the pro services in the C Corp work. Full stop.
Okay. So D Jackson has a question about recommending some good pitch deck companies. And people replied back with like, hey, where they could find examples of templates and stuff. But I don't think that was the real question. I think the question is like, and D Jackson, you could jump on, is like, who's an actual like individual I can work with on like really polishing and creating a professional pitch deck? Is that the question? Versus more like, where can I find templates or good examples?
Correct, sir. Yes, indeed.
So, I've worked with a handful of different like graphic designers and people. Is there some who are good, some who don't sort of understand the business and takes longer? Does anyone have any recommendations for, companies that are professional pitch deck creators that they can put in the chat?
Y Combinator's GPT that they use for their submissions. There's a lot that Gen AI can do here. And there's Mark Gannett has a whole process for creating a pitch deck using Gen AI. And there's a bunch that you can get that's essentially free. And then go out and do pitch events until you stop getting new useful feedback. So that's different than paying somebody, but you got to own it as a founder, and you can get a lot of support from Gen AI now.
Yeah, so AI is one way to go. There's an app I've used in the past called the Gamma app that's usually good at getting like an initial one together. Canva, Roy mentioned, is another good one that has a lot of great templates and AI. But there's still something to be said for actually hiring a professional graphic designer and going back and forth with them to optimize your deck versus NAI. So if anyone has any, really good people, I'd be interested in knowing who they are too.
Yeah, I can help you out with that. I actually have a friend who's actually my content manager based out of India. He does my podcast, all the content editing, pitch decks, one pagers, very affordable, very good quality, and he's part of a few founder communities in the US as well. So I'd love to make the intro if you're interested.
Okay.
If I can make a comment on this, Peter. So what's the purpose for getting that individual, that pitch writer? I mean, is it really the graphics, or is it really to help you build your business plan? Okay.
Well, I think it's more about how to effectively convey your message with the right text and graphics in a concise way, where you can have a pitch deck that serves as both a read deck and a presentation deck, rather than having to create two. That's my initial thoughts. D. Jackson, can you add to that?
You're right on it, man. I really appreciate it. Yes.
Wow. So you've already created your business plan or your pitch deck, and now you want to make it pretty.
Well, no, I've actually hired someone to do a pitch deck. I'm just not sure if it's hitting all of the characteristics you spoke of today on the call. So I like to at least run what's currently going on by someone to see if it's meeting what will be needed at some point in time, and make sure I'm on the right path.
Okay, well, you can definitely reach out to myself, Don, Mario, and we could take a look at it and give you some initial feedback. Always good to test it before you actually go pitch it to investors that write checks.
Correct. Yep. Thanks.
Great. All right. So we're at
Peter,
time.
can I ask just a quick thing? Mario, you mentioned about the two divisions, and one should focus on one part, otherwise investors will not invest. But I know a couple of entrepreneurs who have full-time jobs, yet they run a startup on the side. So you think this is not, but they got funding. I mean, is this something that you do not recommend? Because they could use the money, like a salary money, to have, to fund their own startup. What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah.
Like, I know one should focus, but a lot of people, do not get money from the first round, or
Correct. So you're bootstrapping basically. So there's nothing wrong with having a real job and then your entrepreneurial job. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that, because you've got to feed your family. But sooner or later, you're going to have to make the jump. Okay, so that's the critical point. So you could build a company to a certain extent, but then eventually you're going to have to say, all right, now I'm committed. Because when you raise capital, that investor is going to want you or the team to participate on the, Now, then what happens is you should really, if you're bootstrapping initially, you build it up to the point where you have a provisional patent, where you have a demo of some kind. Then you have some value. And at that point, you can go to an investor and say, I think with all the sweat and tears I put into this, I put in 50,000 of my own money. It's worth X amount of dollars. Then the investor sees what you've actually put into it and has some value.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. Peter, since everybody is talking about pitch deck, why don't you have an event where some of us submit some pitch decks, or show some, and you guys, all of you, give some comments, review it while
I
on the
believe,
spot.
Don, do you have some pitch deck events coming
We
up?
do have, yes, thank you. Great plug. I'm not sure exactly when, but in the next few weeks, we have a number of more of these quick takes, right? These Founder Institute webinars, which include, pitching. And so exactly, you will get, some of us on a panel, and you'll get some feedback on a pitch deck, on an elevator pitch, on whatever. Absolutely.
Okay. So we're over time, but I want to sort of just thank the presenters, thank you as attendees, and for your questions. And I wanted to give, Don, David, and lastly, Mario, one last word of advice and, inspiration for our startup founders, because we know how hard this is and we're here rooting for you. Don, any last thoughts or comments?
Yeah, it is, ask, right? You've got a panel full of people, again, if you just ask, hi, I need some advice, I need some thought, again, we want to be respectful of your time. Can you give me 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, to look at my pitch deck, to answer my question? Would you know a co-founder who would be good for me? Do you think I'm doing the right thing? Et cetera. Ask, you will be pleasantly surprised. And those people say, like, I don't have time for you. Well, you move on.
All right, David.
I'd say your pitch is never done, only pitched, and it's a dynamic system. The market changes, your situation changes, and you as a founder are just managing that journey. But listen to criticism, and when you hear the same feedback more than once, take it very seriously.
Thanks, David. Great advice. And Mario, we'll end with you.
So being an entrepreneur, whether you're going to be successful, and you may have to fail, but being an entrepreneur is just not that easy. And I'll leave you with 3 words, just 3 words: persistence, commitment, and execution. Right? You got to be persistent, even though you're going to run into problems and hurdles and whatever. You got to be persistent, and then you got to be committed that you're on this, you're going to be successful, and then you have to execute. And that's where you have to build a team to make sure you execute whatever your business plan is.
All right. Well, thank you, panel. Thank you, attendees. We hope to see you at our next set of events. And Mario, this was great. I love this. This is terrific. Thanks, everyone. And you'll get a copy of the recording in a few days.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you to everyone.
Thanks, Mario.